everyone, it's Erica from Sparklettes Art. Today we're going to talk about art supplies. So maybe you're a brand new homeschooler, or maybe you're a homeschooler who has decided to start an art club, or you've been asked to cover the art class in your homeschool co-op, or maybe you're hosting a class after school, or maybe you're just a homeschooler who's having your kids' friends over for a group art project once in a while. We're going to look at this as though you have no art supplies in your closet, okay? Oh, maybe you just signed up for a Glitterbombers membership and you're looking through this Sparklettes Art Glitterbombers website and looking at all these awesome projects and realizing, oh my goodness, they use a lot of stuff. Yes, we do. That's what makes Glitterbombers so awesome, is that we're not just a how to draw membership. There's so much more to it. And one of those things is that we do use a lot of different mediums, and we use different supplies, and we learn different techniques, and we really go at art from every angle, right? But we know that that can get expensive, especially if you're buying everything all at once. We suggest starting with these first 10 supplies and then slowly building up your art arsenal, right? So that you can do some of the more fun projects or use some of the different techniques. But to start off with, whether it's for an empty closet for your personal homeschool, or whether you're putting together an art club and you're trying to decide what supplies each individual child is going to need, here are 10 basic art supplies that you can get started with. Number one is paper, which seems really obvious, right? But it's not always obvious, because you can't just use computer paper. You've got to get yourself a great quality sulfite paper. You want a sulfite paper that's at least 80 pounds. 90 is better if you have younger children, because they really like to slop that paint on, but 80 should do a pretty good job, somewhere between there. You want a good sulfite paper because it can handle not just pencil, but marker and watercolor and tempera paint. It can handle all of the mediums, so that's what you want to go for, because you don't want to have cruddy looking projects at the end. You want your projects to be big and bold and beautiful, and for your kids to be happy when they're done and really proud of their work. So get yourself a good sulfite paper to start off with. Next on the list is scissors. Okay, again, sounds obvious, but this is for classroom use, really. If you're putting together a class, you want to make sure that each kid has their own pair of safety scissors. If they're older kids, you can get like the sharper ones, but for younger kids especially, get yourself each a pair of safety scissors, and have yourself a nice, really good pair of scissors on hand in case we need a little extra help. But every kid should have their own pair of scissors. You don't want to be sharing during this time, because then one kid gets behind and they're rushing and it's a big mess. So make sure that everybody has their own scissors. Number 3 on the list is going to be glue. Of course, you need to have glue. You need to have either glue sticks or liquid glue. Your choice. It really depends on what you prefer to use, what projects you plan to do, but you're definitely going to need to have some glue on hand. I really like glue sticks for younger kids because it's a little less messy and it's a little quicker to dry. Things stick right away without like gooping all over the place, but it really just depends on the age of your kids, the projects you're doing, and what type of glue you're going to need to use the most. You decide. Next on the list, again, kind of obvious, but pencils. You definitely want to have pencils. So you're going to need good pencils. You do not want to have pencils that have terrible erasers. Even if you bought extra erasers for the kids to use, don't even give them the pencils that have the erasers that smudge, because they will inevitably use them and they will mess up their paint to their drawings, and then they'll be all upset. So make sure you get yourself some good pencils, and they each need to have a good eraser. Even buy some extra erasers, because we all know in art, kids like to erase. Next on the list is going to be Sharpies. Now, I know, don't come for me. I know it's really scary to give a young child a permanent marker, but here's the deal. We recommend Sharpies because Sharpies are not going to run if you use them with watercolor. So you can see, oh, that's not watercolor. Here's watercolor. The Sharpie doesn't run. If you're going to use a Crayola marker, it's a washable marker. When you use the watercolors, it's going to ruin the pattern that you made with your marker. And a lot of these projects, you're going to use both the Sharpie and watercolors to really make it pop. So you want to make sure that you have a really good, like, permanent marker that's not going to run. Next is going to be watercolors. Yes, we just talked about these. So you definitely want to have a nice set of watercolors, per student. If you're using the small palettes, you definitely want to have a per student situation. If you're going for just your own homeschool, your personal use, you can probably share some watercolors. You can probably get one of those nice big palettes that has all different colors of the rainbow in it. But if you're doing one palette per kid and you're filling up a class, you want those regular Crayola, nice primary sets of watercolors to get you started. Next on the list is going to be tempera paint. So tempera paint, whether it's going to be for just your homeschool, your personal use, or in a classroom for your group or your class, you want to get a nice big set of tempera paint. You're going to be divvying this out a little bit at a time, whether you're using paper plates or if you're fancy and you have some paint palettes for everybody to use. So you don't need to get individual tempera paints per child, but you do definitely want to have tempera paint on hand. And it's great to have, if you can, a little extra black, white, and blue because they get used a lot. So next, of course, if we've got our watercolors and we've got our tempera paint, we need paintbrushes, right? So everybody is going to need some paintbrushes. It's tempting to buy a big old pack. You don't want to get the cruddy plastic ones. And if you've got really young kids, then you can get those big chunky ones. But for the most part, to pull off some beautiful art, each kid should probably have a flat brush, a rounded medium brush, and a detailing brush. Miss Julie actually did a video about this a while back. You can check it out in our shorts. Next on the list is going to be up to you. So if you're using Crayola, markers and colored pencils pretty much cost about the same to start off with. They are equally important. It depends what projects you're going to do. So this one's really up to you, whether you want to stick with the marker set or colored pencil set. Depends on the age of your kids. Sometimes younger kids struggle with colored pencils because it takes a long time for them to color in the big spaces. But generally speaking, one of those two, depending on the age and the projects that you guys are going to be doing, either a marker set or a colored pencil set. All right, number 10, last but certainly not least, you thought I was going to forget, crayons. Of course you need crayons. Crayons are like the most quintessential art supply, right? And the thing about them is they don't just color regularly. What I love about crayons on this list in particular, when you're just starting off, is that so many of our projects use this beautiful watercolor resist technique. And if we don't have money to start off with oil pastels for our house or for everybody in our co-op or our group, then we can use crayons as a substitute for oil pastels. Not when it comes to blending, but in so many of the projects, we use the oil pastels for watercolor resist. And the technique that it makes is just absolutely beautiful. And you can do the same thing with a crayon. So keep that in mind when you're formulating your plan for your supplies, whether it be for a class or for your personal use. Crayons work to substitute for some of the more advanced supplies until you can work those into your homeschool, until you can make those purchases and build up that art arsenal and just get all the things that you want. So those are our basic 10. Those are the first basic things to start with. Now, if you are hosting an art class, this is what you need to think about when it comes to these supplies. If you have decided to host an art class, this series is going to be awesome for you because we are going to go over soup to nuts, how to plan for it, what to expect, what to think about, how to choose your locations. And the first thing we're talking about today is supplies, right? So really, it's going to come down to the money situation. What kind of class are you hosting? Are you hosting a free art class? Art that you are just volunteering to teach. You're going to teach art in the park. Whoever comes, and you're just going to be very loosey-goosey about it. Or are you going to teach a free class at the library? Are you going to teach a paid class? Now, if you're going to teach a paid class, you need to decide, are you getting paid just for your time, or is that payment going to cover your art supplies? Because that can be pretty expensive to start off with when you're first stocking up your classroom, right? So you need to decide these things. If you are going to be paying for your art supplies based on your intake, then you need to be really frugal about it, right? If you're going to put the kits together yourself and every kid gets the same this, and this, then you need to work that into your price and you need to be frugal about it. If you are not going to do it that way, you need to make sure that whatever art projects you have planned, you're vocal about your supply list. You want to be considerate of the parents' wallets, right? You don't want to have 5 art projects that use neons and clay and like everything under the sun that is going to be all extra expenses. You want to try and keep to like this basic list, maybe one or two things outside the list that would be fun to play with, but you don't want to kill them on the art supplies on the way in the door. Be realistic, think about what you would want to spend, and understand that some of these people might be running out and buying all this stuff at once. So try not to go too crazy, and definitely plan in advance with those projects so you know what you're going to be using, and you can either make your supply list or tell the people who are coming to your class what they need to bring. Because there's nothing worse than a kid who has no idea and they don't have enough stuff and you're scrambling. If you don't have the extra stuff for it, you really need to make sure that everybody else is prepared. That's really important. If you are just starting a class or a co-op class or a group, any of those things, you want to make sure you keep that in mind. Now, as you move forward, there are some really fun art supplies that you can add to your arsenal as you make more purchases, as you maybe make a little extra money doing this art class. As if you're just talking about your own homeschool personal use, don't forget that birthdays and holidays, art supplies make awesome gifts. So as you move on, as you develop in your artistic journey, as you start checking off those art projects in our Glitterbombers membership that maybe you really want to try, but you don't have that art supply yet, put on your wish list. There are some really great supplies to choose from. So I would start by adding either oil or chalk pastels, because those are really fun to play with. They blend beautifully, and we have some really great projects with both of those mediums. Another thing to think about adding is watercolor pencils. So they're regular colored pencils until you add water on a paintbrush, and then they pull that beautiful watercolor effect out. They're really fun to play with, especially for a little bit of older kids. You might also want to think about adding metallics or neon, whether it's tempera paint or paint pens, just having some little extras to add a little extra oomph, some little sparkle, some little glimmer. And the neons are really fun, especially around Halloween. We've got some great projects that you add a black light and the neon paint really pops. So that's something that you can think about adding in a little bit at a time as you get further on your artistic journey. Also, as you're moving on and as you're developing, you're going to wind up upgrading some of your supplies. So especially if it's just your personal homeschool, but even in an art classroom, just explore a wider range of watercolor palettes. If it's in an art classroom, each kid maybe gets their own primary palette, maybe one per table if you start getting those larger palettes that have all those beautiful different colors to choose from in there. Markers are another thing that you can really upgrade. They make some great, awesome, I'm going to say it wrong, Ohuhu is a great brand for alcohol markers, and they come in these big giant kits with all different colors in them. That's something else that, again, maybe one per table if you're doing a class, but if it's just for your family, investing in something like that is so super fun and really just upgrades your art projects. There's also really fun things like tempera paint sticks and gel crayons that come out with this really creamy, beautiful, pigmented color. They're really fun to play with, but it's not necessarily something you want to start off with because, again, especially with a class, that price tag really starts getting up really quickly. So things to add to your homeschool, things to add to your arsenal, things to add as your art class develops, but things to keep in mind, especially when you're making your wish list of projects you want to try. And just really have fun with it, guys. I really hope that this was a helpful video for you. I know that this is a series that there's a need for. I know so many people who have thought about hosting a class or starting a class, and we really want to try and cover that from soup to nuts and give you some very realistic ideas about what to expect, what to plan for, and how to go about starting something like this. Also, don't forget that our Glitterbombers membership, Soul Sparklettes Art, is the most phenomenal way to start a class. It is access to hundreds and hundreds of projects, PDFs, videos. The supply lists are all there. You can search for things by topic. They come in bundles that are already pre-bundled by topic. It makes such an easy development for a class or a co-op, or even just like a little series, which is what I like to do, like 4-week series, Fairy Tale February, March Madness, whatever you want to do. It's very easy to choose from this huge library. So take a peek, check out Soul Sparklettes. I hope this video was helpful for you, and stay tuned, guys, because we got a lot more coming your way.